Hi, I'm Kendra with Where's Moon Astrology, and today I am talking about Mercury in Cancer. So Mercury is the planet that rules the way you speak, the way you think, the way you communicate. It's all about your mental processes. Mercury is connected to the nervous system and the brain. So this is going to be about the way you process information, the way that you communicate with others, and the way that you learn. So for Mercury in Cancer, we're combining the intellect of Mercury with the emotional nature of Cancer. Cancer is a deeply emotional sign, arguably the most emotional sign of the zodiac. So, for the Mercury in Cancer person, the thought process tends to be fairly emotional. Now, this isn't a rule. Not all Cancer placements of any kind are going to be extremely emotional people. That's kind of a misconception. The parody of this placement would be someone who just cries constantly, constantly talking about their feelings and, just really, really messy emotionally. But that's not necessarily the case. I think that Mercury in Cancer is really more about internalizing. They'd probably be more shy than certain other Mercury placements, like, Mercury in Gemini, Mercury in Aries, Mercury in Sagittarius. Those are going to be a little bit more outgoing. I think that Mercury in Cancer is going to be a lot more introverted. So a lot of their processing happens very internally. A lot of their mental processes happen very internally, and they don't necessarily speak on a lot of things. Now, Cancer placements in general can be a bit passive aggressive, so a Mercury in Cancer person might be the type to have an issue and have a very hard time expressing that or expect you to intuit that, because Mercury in Cancer themselves will be very intuitive. Any Cancer placement is going to be fairly intuitive, and they're going to be able to pick up on what's going on with you fairly easily. They kind of expect that from you. In general, they're going to kind of have this expectation that you should be as intuitive as they are, and you should be as sensitive as they are, and you should be able to pick up on what their issue is if they have an issue, instead of being able to voice that like a more outgoing Mercury sign. One thing that people often get wrong about Cancer placements in general is that they are very needy and they need to be constantly stimulated by other people. I don't see them that way at all. I think of Cancer as actually a sign that is very reserved with their energy, and they can get easily overwhelmed actually, because they really need a lot of alone time and they really need a lot of space. That's why I say Mercury in Cancer is much about internalizing and intuiting information. It's just a very internalized process for them. They don't want to be overwhelmed by a lot of stimulus, and they don't probably talk to a lot of people very much. My sister actually has Mercury in Cancer, and she constantly has 30 unread messages, regardless of what medium she's using. She's constantly got messages that haven't even been opened or looked at because she's very reserved with her energy. She doesn't want to be talking to people constantly. She doesn't want to be engaging them and feeling as though people are taking her energy. And that's big for Mercury in Cancer as well, preserving that energy and doing things in a more internal way. They can get easily overwhelmed by a lot of people talking to them and a lot of people demanding conversation with them, a lot of people demanding their energy. So, for Mercury in Cancer people, when they do choose to communicate, it's going to be a little bit slower, a little bit more methodical, not slow like Mercury in Taurus or something like that, but a little bit more methodical, not because of having a lot of strategy or a lot of logic behind what they're saying, but because they do have that shy, kind of cautious nature in the way that they're communicating with other people. And they're very sensitive, so they don't want to cause hurt feelings, and they can be very, again, intuitive about how to do that best. So they're just approaching communication very cautiously. They also tend to communicate emotionally in the sense that they are going to want to communicate about things that inspire them emotionally. So things that mean something to them on an emotional level, those are going to be the things that Mercury in Cancer chooses to communicate about. They don't have a very easy time communicating about things that don't mean anything to them, that don't matter to them on an emotional level. They don't care. And so if they don't care, they don't want to communicate about it. It has to impact them on an emotional level. This can actually be tiring for the people around them because Mercury in Cancer will tend to fixate on something that does matter to them emotionally and insist on talking about that. and they can be a little bit almost careless. Now, you wouldn't expect Mercury and Cancer to be careless, but they can almost be a little bit careless with you in conversation, because what happens is it doesn't matter to them. Even if it does matter to you, and you're talking about something that really means something to you on an emotional level for you, if Mercury and Cancer doesn't want to talk about that and doesn't mean anything to them emotionally, they might just skip right around it, first accuse you of trying to dominate the conversation when really you're just trying to share something that is important to you. And of course, this is unintentional for the Mercury and Cancer person, because they are very sensitive and they want you to feel heard, but they don't always understand that you talking to them about something that they're not interested in is not you trying to verbally assault them, it's you trying to share as well. So there can be a little bit of a disconnect there, to where they don't quite understand what is happening in conversation, and they can be almost a little bit domineering about what is happening in that conversation, because they want to communicate about what is important to them emotionally. But with Mercury in Cancer being very sensitive and very cautious in the way they approach communication and not wanting to cause hurt feelings, they can be very sensitive and very sweet in their communication as well. They can be very loving in their communication, really wanting to let friends and family and people that are important to them know that they do love them, even if they don't communicate that constantly, because they are Mercury in Cancer. They're going to be reserved, but they are going to want to be someone that you can come to. When you're upset, when you're distressed, a Mercury in Cancer person would be a great person to talk to, because they are going to be showing that empathy. They are going to be communicating love and sympathy towards you most of the time. Unless you have some other things going on that would make that person a bit more detached, they can be very, very sensitive and very sweet and loving in the context of wanting to show you empathy and show you care. Cancer is a very caring sign. So they're going to want to help you through whatever it is you're going through, and they can be very porous and kind of absorb what's going on with you as well. As far as how Mercury in Cancer learns, for one, again, things have to have an emotional appeal for Mercury in Cancer. So it is going to be important for them to draw emotional connections with the information that they are taking in. Just like in conversation, they don't want to hear about things that don't have an emotional impact on them. They don't want to absorb information that doesn't have an emotional impact on them. So I think the best strategy for Mercury and Cancer people is to attempt to understand information that is boring or seemingly useless or doesn't have an emotional impact on them, and finding ways that it does. So a Mercury and Cancer person might want to look at, how can I use this information in the future? How could this information potentially allow me to help someone? How could this information impact my life in a positive way? So it can be selfish even. It doesn't have to be all about helping other people, but it can be kind of a motivating influence for Mercury and Cancer to understand how information is going to better their life in some way, how it's going to improve their life. Even if it's boring information and they don't want to learn it, they can learn it if they can find a way that it makes their life better, if they can find the emotional impact. So Mercury and Cancer will naturally absorb information on things that do matter to them. So they can quickly and easily see how this information is going to make an impact on them. For instance, psychology might be something that Mercury and Cancer easily absorbs, learning about psychology, learning about human interactions and the way the human mind works, things that have to do with early childhood. That would probably be easy for Mercury and Cancer to absorb. But for other things, you might have to look a little bit deeper. So for advanced math. And I'm also not quite sure how to tell you how that could have an emotional impact on you, but I'm sure there's a way, and I'm confident that you will find it, Mercury in Cancer. Just don't tell me, because I don't care about it. Mercury in Cancer might better absorb information if they're learning the information with someone they love or someone they want to make a connection with. So learning with friends, that might be good for Mercury in Cancer. Learning from a loved one, that might be good for Mercury in Cancer. Just anything that would give a very dull, boring, dry situation a little bit more of that emotional appeal for them. Cancer, while not being a very easily bored sign like Gemini or Sagittarius, can get bored if things just don't have that emotional appeal for them. So finding any way that the information can have an emotional impact on you would be good for you to absorb it, even if it has nothing to do with the information itself, but how you're learning it. Anyway, that's all I have to say on Mercury and Cancer. I really hope that you enjoyed this video, and I did want to remind you that I have all kinds of chart readings in my store, including birth chart readings, relationship readings, and individual planetary report readings, which include Mercury readings. I really hope you check those out, and once again, I hope you enjoyed this video, and have a great day.